One of the most interesting forays I've been making recently in Steam Deck gaming for myself is getting the Pixel Remasters of all of the Final Fantasy series. Now, I'm dating myself a little bit to say that I played the original Final Fantasy 1 back when it was new, and it was one of the first games I had ever played, and definitely the first RPG that I had played alongside Dragon Quest. And in this video I wanted to talk about Final Fantasy VI. I've kind of been playing somewhat sequentially. I did Final Fantasy 1, I skipped 2 and 3, I did 4, I did 5. 5 was cool to play because back in the day, since that never came out in the US, the only way to play it was with emulators, and you had to translate the ROM, and then you were relying on somebody's random translation. So it was pretty cool recently to get like an official version, quote unquote. Something I noticed for sure, going through Final Fantasy IV especially, and then again in 6, is just how different of a game these play with some kind of more adult strategy. Because obviously as a kid, especially in Final Fantasy IV, I was pretty much a blunt instrument the way that I made it through the game. You know, I, for instance, never really used Rosa for more than healing in Final Fantasy IV, didn't use her buffs or her other stuff, and when I was doing that again playing through now, I was like, wow, Cecil is a beast if you start like casting Berserk on him or like, you know, casting haste and stuff like that. In Final Fantasy VI, there are a few distinct changes that I made deliberately that I just figured I'd talk about for other fans of the series, especially if you're considering playing through the Pixel Remaster again, something to keep in mind. But I'd also welcome, as you listen to this, you know, you commenting your own strategies and styles. One thing that I remember from lots of years ago when I was playing Final Fantasy VI was that by the late game, everybody kind of felt the same. But I realize now that was sort of my fault because I had the habit back then of you just give everybody every Esper and you make them learn pretty much all of the spells to be as powerful as possible. But, you know, that comes with the drawback of, like, to some degree, well, then everybody has the same skills. What's the point? Something I was really deliberate about that I wanted to lean into the role-playing about way more this playthrough was to say, whatever class, you know, that each person is, I really want to lean on that and build them around that. I also never really paid a lot of attention back in the day to the magicite that would give you stats on level ups. I always just thought like, oh, the stats probably don't really matter a whole lot, and wasn't thinking in terms of like cumulative. Like, for instance, what if you're deliberate about always equipping Terra with Zone Seeker or Zona Seeker or one of the other ones that gives you +2 magic every time she's about to level up? You know, yeah, +2 doesn't sound like a lot, but by the time you've done that for 15 or 20 levels, her magic is so much higher than everyone else's. Even before the World of Ruin, I was noticing she was doing, no joke, like 50% more damage than Locke or some of the other characters, and it really struck me like, yeah, like it makes sense to be this deliberate about it. Cyan, for instance, I almost exclusively leveled him with the Bismarck magicite for the +2 strength. They changed the text on some of the like intro cards as they're introducing the characters, but I remember back in the day when Cyan is first introduced, it said something about like with the courage and strength of 100 men. I always thought that was awesome. And as I was playing it again recently, I was like, yeah, well, like let's build him that way to have the strength of 100 men. I'm just gonna level him like exclusively with Bismarck, and really lean on his Bushido techniques. If I give him spells, I'll treat him a little bit like a paladin. He'll get certain healing spells and a couple support spells, but largely I'm not really giving him spells. Like, he's just going to be like the ultimate warrior, and I'm going to get his strength up as high as possible. That was pretty successful. Like, I remember being sometimes underwhelmed with him many years ago, thinking he's supposed to be this badass, but like, he's not really that much more powerful than anybody else. And building him this deliberately this playthrough, he actually felt strong. Like, there were reasons to pick him, and by the time I got the slash Bushido where he hits 4 times, that starts becoming really powerful. I read somebody in a forum saying if you boost his strength up high enough by the end of the game, he can sometimes hit for 9,999 damage, and if you do the slash, well, then he's hitting 4 times at that. That makes him one of the strongest characters in the game doing that, because nobody hits 4 times without really special build. So that was really fun to do, actually, and I enjoyed making Locke more of like a general like support character. I figured like, well, he doesn't get any special combat ability other than stealing like Bushido or Blitz, And so I'll sort of level him with like magic boosting stuff, but also I'll boost his strength up a good amount. And then he has a lot of like random support and healing skills. And I made Celis. I've always pronounced it Celis. I've heard some people say Celise. Put in the description how you say her name. But anyway, I always made Celis and Terra like the main spellcasters of the game. Even though Realm has a naturally high magic rating as well, and I did kind of use her for that, I really leaned into the like, well, these two women, because of their backgrounds, have a stronger tie to magic than anyone, so I'm actually going to roleplay that they are and build them to be vastly more powerful than everyone else. And then later in the game, as I got the Magicite that would give you Ultima and like the really big spells like Flare or Meteor, I only had those two learn those spells and roleplayed like they're the only ones who are powerful enough to handle this level of magic. And that was cool because then when I'm like building parties, there was a specific reason to choose them. You know, that I'm like, well, I want the heavy hitter magic users, so which one of them am I going to bring in this? And then everybody else is backing them up, you know, in their own ways. And that's been a lot more fun to me to do, and to notice that certain skills are powerful because they don't seem to take into account an enemy's defensive power. Like Sabin's pummel, or whatever they call it in the Pixel Remaster, I'm drawing a blank to that, but his first blitz, where he just punches him a bunch of times, that's surprisingly viable well into the game, largely because it doesn't calculate their defense. So where other skills or his base attack might be pretty weak, that will still do a good amount of damage. Same for Cyan's Fang, his original Bushido, it does the same thing. Stuff that I never noticed playing through the game all those years ago. And then looking at Locke early game, because he's one of the characters I really enjoy a lot, and the game kind of does force him, you know, into your party for a good chunk of the first half of the game. I'm like, all right, well, if he doesn't have any of those cool combat techniques, then he's the natural person who's going to end up with the Genji glove. And I'll use the Atlas armlet, I think they call it the Gigas armlet in the Pixel Remaster, to boost his attack power as much as possible. And then when I leveled him with strength and stuff as well, then he was, of course, the natural person later in the game when I got the Master's Scroll, formerly called the Offering Ring. He was naturally the one to do it, and makes Locke into a real beast as well. There's a lot of choices like that were really interesting playing through the game again. And some of the quality of life changes that they added to the Pixel Remasters are super. Like, you can go into the boost menu and you can do stuff like change how fast you get gold or experience or magic AP, which in Final Fantasy VI is huge because some of those espers take a long time to get spells. And so there were points where I cranked up the magic AP gain just so it could help me do the other thing I was doing more, because my thought was like, all right, well, if a certain character can learn certain spells more quickly, then they can go back to just equipping the Esper that they want to level with, and I can focus them more that way. That was really helpful with that. There are even cases where, like, even if you think that's cheating, where I went the other direction. Like on Final Fantasy 1 when I played it, I remember actually turning the experience gain down because certain areas seemed to want you to grind to get enough gold to buy stuff, and then I was over leveled, and so you can kind of turn down the experience gain to like prevent that from happening in some cases. I just think like some of that stuff is really nice. Turning off random encounters if you don't want to walk all the way back out of a cave and like fight the same battles that you fought like 300 times already. Sometimes that's really helpful. And I never felt like that was making me under leveled because I actually was fairly grindy at certain parts anyway. So I just think that's, man, those are a lot of fun and they feel made for playing on the Steam Deck. So I've been having a blast playing through this series again. I've also got Final Fantasy 12, Zodiac Age, that I'm going to play probably in the next game or so after I wrap up 6. But I also have Final Fantasy 2 that I just got recently. I never played that back in the day, actually. So this is new for me getting into that. I'm an hour or two into that game. Maybe I'll talk about that one in a separate video. But anyway, I just wanted to nerd about my experience with 6 for a minute and talk about it for other fans of the game. And I'm welcome to hear your feedback and what you've felt, especially if you, like me, hadn't played these games for a long time and then got the Pixel Remasters recently to like revisit a childhood classic. What's that been like for you? All right, guys. Well, thanks for watching with me, and I'll catch you in the next one.